Coming up this week, Rivian releases specs and pricing on the R1T and R1S. BMW reveals their iX SUV, and more. Well, hello friends, and welcome to episode 40 of the EV Resource Podcast. My name is Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and answers to your questions about electric vehicles. Before we get to the news this week, I do want to say if you hear some background noise, I've got two little kittens in the room behind me here. So if you hear some noise, some skittering around, possibly some meowing, they're most likely play fighting with each other. So please ignore that. Nothing I can do about it. But let's get right to the news. Earlier this week, Ford unveiled the all-electric version of its popular transit delivery van. The e-Transit, as they're calling it, will have a smaller battery and less range than most popular EVs, but Ford reassures potential commercial customers that it will be more than enough to meet their last-mile delivery needs. The e-Transit will come packing a 76 kilowatt-hour battery with 67 kilowatt-hours usable, which should power it for 126 miles of range. Ford says that the decision to work with the smaller battery pack was based on an analysis of 30 million miles of real-world driving telematics of its non-electric transit customers to deliver, as they say, the right amount of range based of fleet needs. Based on that analysis, Ford determined that the average daily mileage of a Ford Transit customer was just 76 miles. When it comes to charging capacity, the e-Transit is going to be able to DC fast charge at over 115 kilowatts. The automaker believes that this will add approximately 30 miles of range in as little as 10 minutes and 45 miles of range in 15 minutes. Now, if function is one part of the equation for commercial buyers, cost and cost of ownership would be the others. The price has to be right. Ford says if they went for a larger battery pack with more range, that of course the price would additionally go up as well, making the e-Transit unaffordable to those customers that Ford is hoping to target. So to that end, they are actually recommending a price of $45,000, which is about $10,000 more than the non-electric transit van's suggested price, but that is competitive with other electric utility vans. So good on Ford to target a very important segment to make the switch to EVs. Next up, on Thursday, BYD announced that they had produced their 20,000th BYD Han, which is the first model that they have equipped with their Blade battery, according to an article released by Gasgoo, a Chinese automotive news site. Production of the Han only started in July, if you'll remember, and after its launching, they have now received more than 40,000 pre-orders for the car. Since then, they have sold 18,362 units, taking up about 34% of the automaker's new energy vehicle sales. BYD says that their monthly output will soon exceed 10,000 units a month. This is one of my favorite vehicles, maybe along with the Xpeng P7 to come out of China, and I really hope we get a chance to see them here in North America, because if we do, it will be exceptionally competitive to a number of the other smaller sedans and even the performance models that we have here available. Can you guys hear that? I don't know if that shows up on the audio. Tell you what, I will introduce you. So I introduced you guys to Aries before, but here is his sister, Artemis. There you go. So that's why we have some noise. And actually, they need to be fed, so I'm going to pause this. All right, and on to the headline stories for the week. Rivian, via an update to its website, has revealed pricing, range, options, and various trims for its upcoming R1T electric pickup truck and its R1S electric SUV, with the first deliveries set for June of next year. The big news, according to Eric Loveday of Inside EVs, is pricing. And on that point, we see that the R1T will start from only $67,500. There are three versions of the R1T, the Explorer, Adventure, and the Launch Edition, being the highest priced one, and that is still only starting at $75,000. Now, the R1S, the R1T SUV variant, has been somewhat of a sleeper model, living in the shadows of the R1T pickup truck, But the electric SUV's production version has also now been unveiled, starting at $70,000, and really that price point puts it very, very competitive with the rest of the luxury SUV market. Rivian has been distancing itself from luxury branding and instead focusing on an adventure culture, if you will, or lifestyle. And Fred Lampert from Electrek says that the R1S electric SUV seems to fit right in with the Cadillac Escalade or the Lincoln Navigator, those other luxury SUVs that honestly we probably won't see going off-road. And now that Rivian has finally unveiled its final pricing and configurations for the first versions of the R1T and the R1S, that price definitely fits the luxury segment, making it very competitive. They do ultimately have two other battery pack options, one smaller and one bigger. They're starting off with ones that are going to provide 300 miles of range, and then later on adding 250 miles or more, that's the smaller one, and 400 miles of range, of course being the bigger one. Now, size-wise, both the R1T truck and the R1S are going to be very capable of handling just about anything you expect or want from them. The R1S is going to be available with 5-seat and 7-seat configurations. So if moving a lot of people, kids, camping stuff, or whatever around is your thing, then maybe the R1S SUV is going to be a good pick. And you want to fill it with people, but then you still need a place to put your stuff. Towing is not going to be an issue for you. The first version of the R1S is going to have a towing capacity of 7,700 pounds. 77,000 would be like a semi-truck, so never mind. 7,700 pounds, and the R1T pickup truck is rated up to 11,000 pounds. Now, these are things that you can expect in other luxury SUVs ultimately, but the R1S and the R1T both have quad motors, one at each wheel. Now, we have seen the R1T perform a tank turn. I talked about that in a previous podcast show. The R1S is going to have quad motors as well, so the power delivery and traction control are going to be exceptional. Acceleration figures for these vehicles, they are saying 0 to 60 is going to come in just 3 seconds. And that does seem to be somewhat of a standard or a target that we keep seeing from so many EV automakers. I know, of course, the EV Hummer from GMC, they're saying is going to do 0 to 60 in about 3 seconds. Of course, Teslas have always accelerated very, very quickly. And it seems like that, and this is just my hypothesis, but maybe because Tesla has kind of put those numbers in there, it's pushing the rest of the automakers to kind of try to get close and match that, even though when it comes to an SUV or a pickup truck, really, acceleration 0 to 60 is not something that I think a lot of people want. But if you say, hey, oh, yeah, it can do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, that is definitely impressive. So what do you guys think about the R1T and the R1S now that we know more about the pricing and the specs and everything? Leave me a comment on the YouTube video or send me an email, hello@ev-resource.com. I want to hear what you think. One of the bigger EV news stories this week is about the BMW iX SUV. According to Inside EVs, when sharing information about the electric SUV that will take the iNext concept to production, BMW seemed much more concerned about design elements than they were with revealing the power, torque, and dimensions. And the design elements themselves, specifically the front styling, are exceptionally polarizing to say the least. Like the i3 and the i8 vehicles, the iX will use an aluminum frame structure integrated with a carbon fiber cage. The carbon fiber reinforced plastic exterior arrangement would form a cage that protects the occupants. However, much like the i3 and the i8, it's not expected that these components will make the iX particularly lighter, even though it's using carbon fiber. BMW did mention that the electric motors they're going to use will not be using rare earth metals, which suggests that they don't use permanent magnets, but that they would allow the iX to reach more than 370 kilowatts or 500 horsepower, which is great. However, BMW was careful not to disclose exactly how powerful the electric SUV will be, only that acceleration will be 0 to 62 in under 5 seconds. Even its battery pack is a mystery, more than 100 kilowatt hours. That's not very specific, but BMW says that it will be enough for a 373-mile WLTP range, which would then equate to a little bit more than 300 miles under the EPA test procedure. They reveal nothing very specific until we get to the battery or the energy efficiency. BMW says that the iX will spend less than 21 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Make the math work out and you'll get about 3 miles per kilowatt hour, which doesn't make it the most efficient vehicle out there, but it is one of the more efficient SUVs. They don't release the voltage of the iX battery pack either, saying that it would just recover 75 miles of range in only 10 minutes of charging and go from 10 to 80% charge in 40 minutes at up to 200 kilowatts. Now back to the front styling. Determine for yourself what you think of it one way or the other. If you're listening to the audio only, I definitely suggest you Google the BMW iX. You'll see what I'm talking about here. The kidney grille that is unique to BMW's brand has expanded. It is now massive. The headlights are very slim, and actually the slimmest that BMW has ever fitted to a car. Honestly, I'm not sure what BMW was going for, except to be very identifiable. And when you see one of these on the road, you will know immediately what it is. But I think it's absolutely hideous. BMW says that the badge on the front will also work as the windshield washer fluids filler neck. There has been a lot of speculation that that would imply that it has no frunk or front trunk. I don't know. It's just weird. But all that being said, it kind of makes sense that BMW is holding back all the technical specifications for one of the highest bets ever on the EV market. It would not cause as much of an impact as BMW hopes, certainly that they know that the design is going to make. For the company's sake, it would be better a positive impact on its fans, but I don't know. I think that we have yet to see what people think. Honestly, everything that I've seen so far across the EV community is basically echoing what I think, that it's just hideous and I would never buy one, even if the technical specifications are amazing. But who knows? I originally thought that the Cybertruck was a very, very ugly vehicle, and it's grown on me quite a bit, and now I actually have a reservation on one. So maybe this large grille design that BMW seems to be going for in their recent vehicles will catch on and kind of grow on me as well, or maybe grow on you. And the last news story I have for you this week comes from Car Buzz about Hyundai's refreshed, restyled look for the Kona EV. They say, like its combustion engine sibling, the 2021 Hyundai Kona EV has arrived with freshened exterior styling and technology upgrades aimed to keep the popular subcompact crossover competitive. The cosmetic updates give the EV a more unique look compared to the regular Kona, the most notable being the new front end. And while the images I'm showing you are of the European model, the suspicion is that the US model will look exactly the same. Instead of a radiator-like design, there's now a smooth body panel with restyled headlights at each side. Also new are narrowed LED daytime running lights and a couple of vertical inlets on the redesigned front bumper. Hyundai claims that this helps to reduce the amount of turbulent air reaching the front wheel arches. And that is something that I've seen a lot of automakers use more and more when it comes to keeping in mind the aerodynamics when they're designing their vehicles. The functional air intake in the lower bumper has been enhanced thanks to horizontal satin accent bars, and the charging point does still remain up front. Even though it's better hidden from before, if you're looking for it, you can definitely see it. It's off-center, which Hyundai does say is part of their styling intent. They are doing that on purpose. Honestly, I think it's probably just because they don't want to move it for cost purposes. I don't know. I don't think it looks good offset like the way it is, but hey, to each their own. Maybe they are doing it on purpose and that's just what they want to do. Now, as far as the rear end go, no significant changes have been made aside from slightly tweaked taillights. There are going to be 5 new exterior paint colors offered. And as with the regular Kona, the EV receives a new 10.25-inch digital display with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto capability, which, to be competitive in today's market, especially the EV market, you have to have that type of technology. There's also a new Blue Link smartphone voice control upgrade and an app that displays the battery and range state and charging times. It will enable remote charging and remote climate control. That is so important. I don't think automakers that don't offer that type of thing these days are going to get away with being competitive. You gotta have the tech. Absolutely. As far as power, the options remain unchanged. It's still using the same 64 kilowatt hour battery pack and 201 horsepower, 291 pound-feet of torque electric motor. Range is rated at 300 miles on a single charge, and the top speed, they are increasing to 104 miles an hour. When plugged into a 100 kilowatt DC fast charger, they say the battery can go from 10 to 80% in about 40 minutes. Now, official pricing hasn't yet been announced for the 2021 Kona EV, but honestly, I wouldn't expect it to change all that much from the 2020 model this year. Hyundai expects the sales to begin early next year. Now, as far as EV questions, this week especially, I have been noticing a lot of people starting to ask more and more questions online about cold weather and how EVs can handle cold weather, what kind of range hit you'll expect from either running the heater or just the fact that it's colder and vehicles are less efficient in colder air temperatures. So if you look on the YouTube channel under EV 101 playlist, there is some tips that I've put together. Actually, I did that last year for older EVs in winter weather, but honestly, a lot of those can apply to EVs in weather, newer EVs as well. I've talked about it before, so I won't really spend a whole lot of time getting into it now. I am going to be including an answer to that question on the webpage as well under the EV 101 section. That should be there sometime in the coming week because it seems to be a repetitive question, so I want to make sure that it's easy to find that answer. The quick answer would be that EVs, just like gas-powered cars, are less efficient in the wintertime. Expect across the board maybe a 20% decrease in how efficient they are. Depending on the way you drive, where you drive, how far you drive, that might honestly make no difference at all to you, but just something to keep in mind. So that's your show for this week. Thank you, as always, to everyone who supports EV Resource, either by listening to the podcast or watching the YouTube videos, sharing with your friends. And I encourage you guys, if you have friends, family, coworkers, anybody that is remotely interested in EVs or even curious and have a lot of questions that they want to find answers to, send them our way. Make sure they know about EV Resource. It will, of course, benefit us, but ultimately our goal is to make sure that we can benefit all of them and all of you. Special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters. If you want to support EV Resource with a monetary support way of doing that, we are listed on Patreon. That's Patreon. You can find us there, patreon.com/EV Resource. We have 3 different tiers. Everybody gets the full access to the EV Resource magazine on a monthly basis. Our producer is James Hart. He has his own podcast, the True North EV Podcast. Google it. You'll find him. And then our executive producer is Tom Wiggins. Now, there are benefits at each tier that build on the lower tiers. So, obviously, as an executive producer, Tom gets his name read every week. And very special thanks to our commercial partner of the podcast, Titan Auto and Tire, for their support. Titan is one of the very few independent shops in Central Virginia that are qualified to work on EVs. And from hybrids to Hummers, they fix everything. And if you've got a question or you want to get your EV or hybrid ready for winter and you're in Central Virginia, they are definitely the place to take it. I definitely invite your feedback via email at hello@ev-resource.com. Leave a comment on the YouTube show, and please don't forget to subscribe so that you'll get the future shows automatically. You don't have to hunt for EV Resource week after week and download it. If you do want to listen to any of the future podcast shows, you can find them on our webpage under the podcast section and on most of the major podcast platforms. Thank you so much for being with me. I'll catch you all next week.